All right, this is the review for the Chapter 2 test, which is going to be Wednesday, September 11th. Okay, test is Wednesday. All right, first question that you're going to have on the test is they want you to order the numbers in increasing order. That means from smallest to biggest, okay? On the test, the type of problem that I gave you is just like this one, all decimals. I didn't mix in decimals and fractions. I just gave decimals. So what I think is the easiest thing to do when there are decimals is think about it as money, okay? If I were to write 70 cents, or let's say I were to write 60 cents, I'd write it 0.60, right? If I were to write 50 cents, it would be 0.50. Or if I were to write 75 cents, 0.75. So if you think of decimals as money, it becomes a lot easier to order them, okay? So let's do that. So we've got $4.66, 0.7. How would I write that as money? Would it be 7 cents or 70 cents? 70, because remember there's always two decimal places in a number. So, two decimal places in money. So you'd put the 0 at the end. 4.6, that's $4.60, okay? Negative $1.80. Then I've got 3, so that would be $3, okay? And then negative 66 cents. So now it becomes a lot easier because I can figure out, okay, the smallest amount of money is going to be what? Negative 180. Exactly, because remember, whenever you're dealing with money or whenever you're dealing with a negative number, the bigger the number is, the smaller it is. What I like to do is I like to cross it off once I'm finished. Okay, then what's going to come next? Negative 0.66. What's going to come next? 70 cents. Next, 3. Don't forget about that 3. Then what comes next? 4.60. And then lastly, 4.66. Okay? That's how we order it from smallest to biggest. It's very easy whenever you look at it as money. Okay, so that was just like question 1 on your test. Now, these questions right here are just like questions 2 through 6 on your test. What you want to do on questions 2 through 6 is you are adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing positive and negative numbers. And remember, you will not be allowed to have a calculator on this test. So you're going to be either adding the numbers together, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. There are 4 rules for each of those operations. Whenever I'm adding, same signs, what do I do? Add and keep. Same signs, add and keep. Write this down somewhere on your paper. Same signs. Add the numbers together and keep the sign that they have the same. Now, when I have different signs, I'm just going to abbreviate different. What do I do? Subtract and take. Okay, so what I do is I look and I see, okay, I have a positive number and a negative number. I subtract those numbers. I take the biggest one minus the smallest one, and then I take the sign of the biggest number. All right, then multiplication. So that's rule number 1, rule number 2, multiplication. If I have an even amount of positive signs, this is for multiplication and division. Even amount of positive sign or negative signs, What do I have? Even amount of negative signs, is my answer going to be positive or negative? Is positive. Okay. Then, rule number 3 or rule number 4 for multiplication and division. If I have an odd amount of negative signs, what's my answer going to be? Answer will be negative. Okay? So these are the 4 rules that I follow. So let's do these problems now. What do you see that should be going off in your head as a red flag that you've got to change? Kyle?
You can't subtract negatives and negatives.
So what do I do to it?
Turn that minus thing into a plus sign.
Exactly. 2 negatives make 1 positive. 2 negatives are turned into a positive. So ask yourself, okay, am I multiplying or dividing or adding and subtracting? Adding and subtracting. So I know my 2 rules for adding and subtracting. Do I have same signs or different signs? Different. I've got a negative 19 and now a positive 26. So I subtract the numbers. 26 minus 19 is 7. And I take the sign of my biggest number. What's the sign of my biggest number? Positive. So my answer is positive 7. Okay? Next problem. Are you multiplying, dividing, adding, and subtracting?
Well, I was just going to ask, how do you know if you're...
Okay, so I need to multiply these 3 numbers together because they all have parentheses around them. So I look at my 2 rules for multiplication. If there's an even amount of negative signs, my answer is positive. If there's an odd amount of negative signs, my answer is negative. Okay? Count up my negative signs. How many do I have? 1. So what's my answer going to be? Negative. So what you do is you just leave or go ahead and write a negative sign. Now you don't even have to worry about it. Let's multiply. 2 times 3 is 6 times 5 is 30. So my answer is negative 30. Okay, this next problem. Am I adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? Multiplying. Okay, because I have parentheses side by side. Count up your negative signs. How many do I have? 2. So what's my answer going to be? Positive. Okay, so now I just multiply. 6 times 10 is 60. And my answer is positive 60. Now let's look at this next problem here. I've got 3 different numbers. Let's work with the first 2. Am I adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? Adding. Okay. Let's look at these numbers. Do I have the same signs or do I have different signs? Same. Look, negative 9 and negative 6. Those are the same signs. They're both negative. So I want to add the numbers together. 9 plus 6 is 15. And keep the sign that they both have, which is negative. Now you may say, but look, there was a plus sign in between it. That plus was just telling me, it's just a little extra hint that says, hey, add these 2 numbers together. Same signs, add and keep. Okay? Now, let's do negative 15 plus 3. Look at this one. Do I have the same signs or do I have different signs? Different. Negative 15, positive 3. So I subtract. What's 15 minus 3? 12. Take the sign of my biggest number. Which one's bigger, 15 or 3? 15. So it's going to be a negative 12. Okay? Like I said, that's just like questions 2 through 6 on your test. Okay, the next type of problems on your test are just like problems 7 through 13. Problems 7 through 13. What they want me to do is they want me to solve these expressions whenever the variable that I have in the equation is equal to a certain number. And they've told us what that number is, okay? What I need to do is I need to plug it in, and then I'm just going to solve this equation. Everybody should be writing this down. So we've got, what do these lines right here mean?
Absolute value.
Absolute value. So I'm going to write the absolute value of negative 45 minus 3, and then for x, I'm plugging in 3 plus 2. Let's take care of those absolute value bars. What is the absolute value of negative 45? Positive 45. Absolute value does not mean, oh, well, that has a negative sign in there, I can't do it. No, that's exactly correct. The absolute value of negative 45 is 45. Now, what if there was a negative sign on the outside? What would I do, Josh? Exactly. That negative has to be in my answer, but I don't have that. So I know the absolute value of negative 45 is 45. Now I've got minus 3 times 3 plus 2. Question, would I do 45 minus 3 first? No. I've got to do multiplication. Negative 3 times positive 3 is what? Negative 9. 45 minus 9 plus 2. Now I just use left to right rule and subtract. 45 minus 9 is 36. Plus 2 is 38. Check and double check and triple check your answers. Go back through. Did I do every step right? Did I plug the number in correctly? Because you will not have your calculator to check your work. It is all up to you. Okay, so for this next one, they want me to plug in 2/5 for x. Now, there is one almost identical to this on your test. Hint, hint, hint. It's not the exact same, but it's pretty much the same. So pay attention. We've got absolute value bars around the whole problem. So I'm going to leave them there. I've got 5. What am I plugging in for x? 2/5 plus 2. And then I write my absolute value bars. Now, what I want to do is I want to save these absolute value bars for the very end. For the very end, okay? I'm going to solve everything inside of here first. And then whatever I get, I'm going to get a single number. And then I'm going to take the absolute value of that, okay? So, order of operations tells me what do I need to do first? Exactly. Multiply 5 and 2/5. So, I get people all the time who go, that's a fraction, I'm done, I don't do fractions, I don't like fractions, okay? Okay? This is what you do. Very simple. And like I said, this is almost identical to the one I gave you on the test. Write 5/1 as a fraction. Then look, what can I do to these two fractions when I multiply them? Cancel out the 5s. They change to 1s. And then I do 1 times 2 is 2 over 1, which is 2. So now I have 2 plus 2. Look, that wasn't so bad. It came out to be a nice whole number. Now, that's almost exactly how it's going to be on the test. So make sure whenever you see that fraction, you don't freak out and go, nope, not me, not doing it. No, try it. Multiply. Figure out, can I cancel anything out? What's 2 plus 2? 4. So the absolute value of 4 is what, Derek? What's the absolute value of 4? Is positive 4. Okay, so this next problem here, we're going to plug in 5 for x. All right, so I take 2 times 5 squared minus negative 3 times 5. And I need to work this out exactly just doing order of operations. Okay? What would I do first? Kyle?
You would do 2 times 5.
No, I don't want to do 2 times 5. Remember, think about order of operations. Parentheses. Do I have any parentheses in this problem? Yep. Is there something that I can do inside those parentheses? Yes, so that's what I need to do first. So I'm going to leave 2 times 5 squared alone. What's negative 3 times positive 5? Negative 15. Okay? Before you go any farther, what do you see that you need to change? The 2 negative signs need to be changed to a positive. Okay? So we've taken care of parentheses. Step number 2 in order of operations is exponents. You have to do exponents before I multiply 2 times 5, okay? So, 5 squared is 25. So now I've got 2 times 25 plus 15. What am I going to do now? 2 times 25, which is 50, plus 15, which is 65. Okay, so remember, you've got to remember order of operations. Got to remember order of operations. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Okay, the next type of problems are just like problems 14 through 18 on your test, okay? And this is the one that gave people on the quiz the most problems. Read the directions. Look at what these directions say. It says, apply the distributive property. Apply the distributive property. That is step number 1. My instructions right here are telling you exactly what to do first. Then, which means second, simplify by combining like terms. So, first distributive property. So, no matter what, in every single one of these problems, 14 through 18, there is going to be some sort of distributive property that you have to do first. Then you worry about taking care of the combining like terms. You never combine like terms before you do distributive property. Is that clear? Always do distributive property first, then combine like terms. So let's look in this first problem for distributive property. What needs to be distributed? Look around at this problem. What should be distributed? Kyle?
Well, first I was going to ask, what is distributive property?
Okay. Distributive property means that whatever is located on the outside of parentheses needs to be multiplied by everything on the inside of parentheses. That's what distributive property means. So I see that this -3 needs to be distributed to everything inside of parentheses. What I like to do is I like to rewrite it. Write your -3 out front. Then it's much easier to see, okay, that I'm going to distribute or I'm going to multiply that -3. Now you say, but Miss Reber, look at this problem right here. It's telling me to subtract. No, these parentheses around that tell me that I'm multiplying a -3. Okay? That's the difference between this and this. This one is actually being added, but this one is being multiplied because there are parentheses around it. And it's directly up next to another set of parentheses, which means multiplication. So I'm going to distribute this -3 to everything. -3 times 5x is -15x. -3 times +6. How many negative signs do I have there? 1. So what's my answer going to be? Negative. -3 times 6 is -18. That's why it's a -18. Plus x. What's that number in front of x that I don't see but I know is there? 1. Now I'm on to step 2. I did distributive property, which was step 1. Step 2 is combine the like terms. Let's look for like terms. What are my like terms in this problem? -15x and 1x. I know that these are like terms because they both have an x. -18 is not a like term. It does not have an x. So, same signs or different signs here? Anybody? Same signs or different signs? I have -15 and +1x. Different. So I'm going to subtract and take. 15 minus 1 is 14. And I take the sign of the biggest number, which is negative. Then -18 does not have any like terms, so I just write it here on the end. Okay, that's exactly how you would do this type of problem. Remember, distribute, then combine like terms. Okay? So let's look at this next problem. This is my answer here. Okay? What am I going to do first? Step number 1 is what? Distributive property. The instructions even tell you. Step number 1 is distributive property. You don't even have to figure it out. What I do have to figure out is what am I distributing? The 4. Look for something that's directly on the outside of parentheses. It's either going to be on the front or the back. And I see that this 4 is right up next to these parentheses, so that's what I'm distributing. So I distribute this 4 to everything. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times negative a is negative 4a. Then I just rewrite minus a because it's just on the end. What's the number in front of minus a? 1. Don't forget about it. Now we're on to step 2. I've distributed. Now it says, then combine like terms. What are my like terms? Exactly. Negative 4a and negative 1a. So do I have same signs or different signs? Same. So I'm going to add and keep. First of all, does 8 have a like term? No, so I'm just going to rewrite it. 4 plus 1 is 5. Keep my sign. And I leave the a. Listen, I cannot stress this enough. There were so many people who did 5a squared on the quiz. No. Whenever you're combining like terms, whatever your like term is, which is a, has to stay the same in your answer. If you write it as a squared, it is wrong. This answer would be wrong, okay? That's how you have to write that answer. Now, this is the last type of problem that we had on the quiz, all right? What do the instructions tell you to do first? Look, what do the instructions say to do first? Apply the distributive property. Does it say combine like terms first? No. So I cannot add those two numbers together because that's order of operations. What has to come first? Multiplication or addition? Multiplication does. So that's why distributive property has to come first. So I distribute that 2x. Now I've got 13x plus, what's 2x times x? 2x squared. Now you may say, okay, hold on a second. You just told me that whenever I have the like terms, that has to stay in my answer. Whenever you add or subtract, whenever you multiply or divide, you count up how many x's you have, and then that becomes your exponents. That's whenever you multiply. Does everybody get that? Multiplication, that's when you write it as an exponent. Whenever you add or subtract, whatever your like term is, has to stay the same. Okay? Now I do 2x times 2, which is 4x. Now I can combine like terms. What are my like terms? Josh?
13x plus 4x.
13x and 4x. Why isn't 2x squared a like term?
Because it has an exponent.
Because it's squared. It's not alike. Okay? 13 plus 4x is 17x. Remember, it's not x squared. Plus 2x squared. And that 2x squared just has to stay there on the end because there is no like term for it. Okay, so the next type of problems that you have on your test, just like problems 19 through 22, simplify the expression. So they want us to divide fractions. Remember, we learned on Friday, you cannot divide fractions. You have to do what instead? Keep, flip, change. Remember, keep, flip, change. KFC. So in this first problem, what am I keeping? Josh? 4x over 3. Flip. What am I flipping? Anybody? 15 over negative 12. All I did here was flip this fraction. Don't forget about the negative sign. And then what am I changing? Josh?
Division sign to a
Exactly. Change the problem to multiplication. Is there anything I can do to simplify this? Yes? All right, let's do it. 3 goes into 3 one time. 3 goes into 15 5 times. Then, can I simplify 4x and negative 12?
Yeah, you can.
Yes, because it's multiplication and division, remember? As long as it's multiplication and division, I can simplify anything. If it were addition and subtraction, then I would say, okay, they're not like terms, so I can't do anything. So I just look at the numbers. What number goes into both 4 and negative 12? 4. 4 goes into 4 one time. 4 goes into negative 12 3 times. Okay? Count up how many negative signs I have in this problem. How many, Abby? 1. So what does my answer have to be? Negative. Very good. So I just multiply 1x. Don't forget about that x. Times 5 is 5x. 1 times 3 is 3. That would be my final answer. Now, it would be okay if you decided not to simplify and you decided to do 60x, because you did 4x times 15 over negative 36. But if you were to get that answer, you would have to simplify that. You always have to simplify into lowest terms, okay? Let's look at this next problem. This is one of the ones on the quiz that I was shaking my head because I'm like, we just went over this. Can I add or subtract 25x minus 10? No, they are not like terms. Does 10 have an x attached to it? No, so they're not like terms. So on that quiz, whenever you did 22x plus 10 and you got 32x, divided by 2 is 16x, that was wrong because I cannot add these two terms. They're not like terms. So what I say is, okay, well, since I can't do that, they each need to be divided by 5 because that's what this division sign right here means. Divide them each by 5. So 25x divided by 5 is 5x. Negative 10 divided by 5 is negative 2. Can I do 5 minus 2 and get 3x? No, they are not like terms. Remember, like terms mean they both have an x. Do these both have an x? No, they don't. So this is my final answer. All right, next type of problems that you're going to have on your test, which is 23 and 24, are adding and subtracting the matrices. So remember, whenever you add or subtract matrices, I need to figure out, can I even add or subtract these? So what I need to do is I need to count up how many rows and columns. They all have the same amount. So I know I'm going to do 4 plus negative 9. Because all I'm doing is taking this plus sign here, is putting it between the numbers that are in the same spot. 3 plus 6, negative 3 plus negative 3, 5 plus negative 5, 2 plus 10, and negative 10 plus 15. Okay, some of you on the quiz, you messed up because you just did addition or subtraction wrong. You forgot about same signs, add and keep, different signs, subtract and take. So what is 4 plus negative 9? Negative 5. 3 plus 6 is 9. Negative 3 plus negative 3 is negative 6. 5 plus negative 5 is 0. 2 plus 10 is 12. And negative 10 plus 15 is 5. And this would be my final answer here. All you got to do is simplify the matrices. Okay, last type of problem that's going to be on your test is evaluate the function for these variables, these values. They want you to plug in negative 2, negative 1, 0, and 1 for x. And they want you to organize it into a table, which just means make an x and y chart. So I do negative 2, negative 1, 0, and 1. All right? So I take my equation. Look at this. I'm plugging in a negative 2 for x. And what does x already have in front of it? A negative sign. So how many negative signs should I have? 2. So I've got negative, then I plug in negative 2 minus 9. What happens here? Becomes a positive. Same signs or different signs now? Different, so I subtract and take. So I should get negative 7. Okay? Then y equals, I'm doing the same thing for negative 1. Oops. Negative 1 minus 9 becomes a positive, and I get negative 8. 0, now I'm negative 0 minus 9 is negative 9. And lastly, y equals negative 1 minus 9 is negative 10. Okay, that's exactly how you would do number 25 on your test. So tomorrow's test, 25 questions, 4 points apiece.